Hello! In this video, I will be reviewing the first Dirk Pitt novel by Clive Cussler, Pacific Vortex. And before we start this video, I just think I should make it very clear to you that I'm definitely not using a stuffed dog as my camera mount. So yeah, just so you know. But yeah, so this book is, it's the first book in the Dirk Pitt series. There's, I think there's like 25 Clive Cussler books featuring Dirk Pitt. And yeah, this is the very first one. And you can, so a spoiler-free review is that you can kind of tell this is the first one, as in there's some of the kind of tropes and stuff that you're used to from Dirk Pitt and Clive Cussler, like, Al Giardino shows up towards the end. We have kind of like a big nautical plot going on, and, Dirk Pitt's up to his normal kind of semi-James Bondy vibes. So it definitely, like, you're reading a Dirk Pitt story, but I will say that the plot is very weak. So basically, there's a big mystery built up to throughout this. So this is still spoiler free. I'll discuss it a bit more in the spoiler section. But there's a very big mystery built up to. But then the reveal is very kind of like, oh, so that's what it was. Like there's not like that. The mystery felt way cooler than the answer to the mystery, which kind of undercuts a little bit of the story. And also you can kind of tell this was written like, excuse me, this was written a long time ago, because there is like a lot of very sexist kind of treatment of women, and like it is a little bit painful. And I don't normally get like notice that sort of stuff too much, but like even I was kind of like, really, like every woman when they enter the story is like described for at least a paragraph in terms of like their sexuality and like what they look like, and every single woman is basically just kind of like treated as chattel by the story, where they're just kind of dragged around. And yeah, so spoiler-free review. This book, like, if you're like, oh my gosh, I have to, finish the whole Dirk Pitt series because I'm just a Dirk Pitt fanatic, then you can start here and you'll be okay. But I would not recommend this book to anyone who's not like there for the Dirk Pitt fanaticism. The only reason I listened to it was because I was about to go do a whole day of water blasting, and I needed something to listen to, so I just kind of downloaded the first thing I saw. But yeah, so spoiler review now. So the plot of this book is that there's this kind of area in the Pacific that ships keep going missing in. Think Bermuda Triangle kind of vibes. And an American nuclear submarine goes in there and goes missing. And so, these guys are looking for it. And it turns out that the person who did this is just kind of this guy who's sinking ships for insurance money. And then, like, rebranding the ships and, like, sending them off. And, yeah. So, I guess what I'm saying is that even just from that description, I'm sure you can see that the mystery is very cool. It's like, oh my gosh, there's like a Bermuda Triangle area, like things, like ships are just sinking, people are like dying. It's a really cool mystery. Like, I wonder what the, is what the answer is going to be. Is going to be, like for example, in the story I bring up, could it be aliens? All these cool, like ideas for what it could be that are actually much more exciting than the story itself, which is just some dude sinking ships for insurance money. And you can tell me, and you'd be absolutely right, that a dude sinking ships for insurance money is a much more realistic place for a story to go. Like, you're much more likely, if there's, like, for example, the Bermuda Triangle is probably is not actually a real thing, and so the realistic explanation is, like, this is a much more realistic explanation. But what I'm saying is that it makes for kind of an unsatisfying and boring explanation. And it's like, I'm reading this book, and all I get is this, it's just dude sinking ships. And just the explanations are really like, it's like, so he takes out this American nuclear submarine, right? But it's like, how does he do this? Because this is like a super advanced, like the next generation of nuclear submarine as well. And apparently the way he gets it, he puts up chains, which like hit the submarine's propellers, and then he waits for everyone in the submarine to kind of like starve, and then he just kind of boards it. So this makes a lot of sense to me, and I feel like this is not actually a way that you could actually take out an American nuclear submarine. Like, I'm not privy to American classified information on submarine warfare, but I have a sneaky suspicion that I wouldn't be able to take out a submarine just by hitting it with a chain and then just waiting for people to starve. Because first of all, they'd be able to communicate. But of course, all of these villains have mystery communication blocking technology, and there's no way to communicate through their communication blocking. So that's very convenient. They perfectly happen to hit the propeller off a chain, and the submarine has no weapons to like get rid of them. They definitely don't have torpedoes or just missiles or anything like that. So yeah, it just felt very contrived and kind of like unsatisfying, because if you tell me, oh my gosh, the submarine got taken out by aliens, I'm like, oh yeah, well, aliens have crazy technology, of course they could take out a submarine. But if you're like, oh, it just got taken out by some insurance fraudster, I'm like, really? Can an insurance fraudster really take out a submarine? And that's not to say, this guy lives in a seamount. So apparently there's a seamount that had a whole bunch of tunnels, because it was like it used to be an island, right? And people were living in and made lots of tunnels. Then a seamount sunk, and this guy decided that the best plan was going to be to pump out these tunnels and live in the seamount. And I'm just like, okay, take with that what you will. It's a bit silly, in my opinion. I feel like there's easier ways. You just have a boat, for example, instead of pumping out an entire seamount. But, anyway, there's, neither here nor there. And if somehow the seamount never got mapped or anything, and that's not explained, like, throughout the entire story, like, how could this be here? It's not on the charts. And I never explained how it's not on the charts, but, whatever. And then, there's what I was talking about earlier, like, the sexist kind of stuff where, like, for example, and it's not just sexist, it's just terrible romance, you know what I mean? Like, there's this character called Summer, who's the daughter of a villain, and she's there. She tries to kill Dirk Pitt at the start, but it's a case of mistaken identity. She's trying to kill someone else, and Dirk Pitt just happens to be there, right? So she's trying to kill. She's kind of trying to kill Dirk Pitt, and then so that's how their first interaction. And then the very next time they interact, she saves his life, and then the next time they interact, he tries to save her life, and then at the end she's like, yeah, I just get this feeling around you, and he's like, that's called love, and I love you too, or whatever. And it's like, you guys have literally met 3 times. Both of those times, Dirk Pitt was about to die, and your entire time you met has been probably about 15 minutes total, and you love each other, and it's just real painful. And of course, every female character is just described as like super hot, and like there's this one character who's her literally in her entire role, she's described as a massive whore who apparently sleeps with everyone, and then she gets kidnapped and just has to be rescued. That's her entire like plot. Those are the only two. Those two that I just described are the only 2 women in the entire story. So yeah, like you can just kind of see that it's a little bit painful. And I guess that's kind of. Let's just get a little bit of a positive though. Like it does, like the mystery is cool, and obviously, like I said, the resolution to the mystery isn't very cool. But the mystery itself is, like for a while you're kind of entertained by that, and there's some cool action. And yeah. I ran out of positives. This is not a fantastic book. It was fine, I was just doing some water blast. I needed something to listen to. And it was fine, but nothing to write home about here, and I wouldn't really recommend at all. But yes, that's Pacific Vortex for you. Now, of course, the Dirk Pitt books get better. I have very fond memories of Atlantis Found and Raise the Titanic, which are some later Dirk Pitt books, and I actually remember those being pretty good. Of course, I did read them when I was much, much, much younger, so perhaps my memories are a bit flawed, but I remember them being good. So don't necessarily take this review as all Dirk Pitt is terrible. Rather, take it as this Dirk Pitt is pretty average. So yeah. Excuse me. That's my review of Pacific Vortex. So yeah, don't pick it up. See you later.